Now, Nicodemus is an important person in John's Gospel, but he's an important person per se, a member of the Sanhedrin, the kind of ruling council of people. So understandably, you can see why he comes by the cover of night to see Jesus. Let's read that account in John 3. I'm reading verses 1 through to 8. Now there was a Pharisee, a man named Nicodemus, who was a member of the Jewish ruling council. He came to Jesus at night and said, "Rabbi, we know that you're a teacher who's come from God, for no one could perform the signs you're doing if God were not with him." Jesus replied, "Very truly, I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God unless they're born again." "How can someone be born when they're old?" Nicodemus asked. "Surely they cannot enter a second time into their mother's womb to be born?" Jesus answered, "Very truly, I tell you, no one can enter the kingdom of God unless they're born of water and the Spirit. Flesh gives birth to flesh, but the Spirit gives birth to spirit. You must not be surprised at my saying, you must be born again. The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from and where it's going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit." The high regard that this man has for Jesus is clearly seen, not only in the fact that he comes to Jesus, but what he says when he arrives and meets him. We read in verse 2, he came to Jesus at night and said, "Rabbi, we know you're a teacher that comes from God. No one could perform the signs you're doing if God were not with him." So he's got a high regard for Jesus. There's no fallout here at all. He comes because he's seen, he's heard. Perhaps he's been in the crowds. Perhaps people have told him all about it. But you know, Jesus cuts through any smokescreen that might exist when he says to him, "Very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God unless they're born again." Perhaps he wanted to see something. Perhaps he wanted to hear something. But those words are very, very powerful. And of course, it raises a profound challenge in anyone's mind to be born anew, born from above, born afresh. But it raises a profound challenge in terms of Nicodemus in this point. Nicodemus asks, surely they can't enter a second time into their mother's womb. That follows on from him saying, how can anyone be born when they're old? Nicodemus came really to inquire as to who Jesus was, and yet was told what had to happen to him. He was in the dark about life himself. All of us need to hear the message that is there for Nicodemus and for all of us, the opportunity of new life, a new beginning, new birth, that which bursts forth, if you like, from the egg that constrains and restricts into something that is marvelously new. Jesus reaches out and challenges him. Very truly, I tell you, no one can enter the kingdom of God unless they're born of water and of Spirit. You see, this change touches every part of life. So it is that it's water and spirit. We go on in the passage to learn that it's about water and it's about wind. Well, both those things are disturbing. Water is that which is cleansing, that which is refreshing. Is there anything better on a lovely Aussie day where the temperature climbs higher than you thought? You get to the middle of the afternoon and you think, that's it now, and it still gets warmer and it builds on to fire. Nothing in the world is more refreshing than a glass of water, a bottle of water. You grab it. You know, when I came from the UK to live here and became an Aussie, you know, I used to think, what's all these bottles of water everywhere for? I have them now, just like everybody else, because we need the water, which refreshes and renews, that makes us feel so totally new when the heat is bearing down upon us. So water has that aspect. Now, wind is very different. For wind is disturbing. Is there anything better? You know, all these fancy folks that buy the best hats and they go off to the wedding and then they find that it's one of those Aussie days when there's a wind comes up. Very hard to keep your hat on when the wind comes. It's got all the danger of blowing it off. And the truth is that wind disturbs. You don't know where it comes from, but when it comes, gosh, what a difference it makes. So you have the refreshment of water and the wind that disturbs. And I think Nicodemus is saying both those aspects are there. If we're going to become new and different, we're going to be a people that are refreshed, and we're going to be a people that are disturbed by the wind of God's presence. there are still many of us who, like Nicodemus, need to hear in our own experience, in our own world, what it is to become new, to become different. And if you've never received that, never understood that, reach out today and find the new life, which is Jesus Christ.